Welcome back to Jacques in the Garden. Today we are working on a long-awaited project, one that I've been wanting to get done for quite some time now. Actually, ever since I was in Maine working on this Home Depot project out there, I built a 2-bay compost system that had a really nice design. It looked super clean, was really easy to use, and quite frankly, it made me feel bad about my setup here in San Diego. So I've been thinking about dreaming up the way to build a even better system for myself here, one that fits my needs. It's going to be a little bit different than what you see out there because I decided to get really weird and particular about it. And we'll get more into that later. But first, let me tell you what has happened thus far, because currently I only have one compost bin, but up until just yesterday, I had 2 bins in this exact spot. So right now I'm crouched exactly where my old bin used to be, the second one. And you could basically see that this wood is entirely rotted. There's almost no structural integrity left to it. It's been either consumed by termites or the microbes that are actively eating this pile up. But what's interesting is that this dimensional lumber, just regular stuff that you could pick up at Home Depot, is entirely fine. It actually still feels hefty. And that's a little bit surprising to me. I thought that regular dimensional lumber would not hold up very long in the compost setup, but it turns out it's absolutely fine. So this new bin is also going to be made out of just regular old dimensional lumber that I got at Home Depot. And that's going to make life a lot easier because it's standard, it's easy to find, and I don't have to do any guesswork or look for any sort of exotic woods. Now, this original system was a 2-bay setup, which I grew to hate. I have been wanting a 3-bay setup for a very long time now, so that is what we're going to be building. But the first thing I have to do is shovel out all of the remaining compost here and get rid of this old bin. So we're gonna get working on that, and then I'll get deep into the build, show you exactly what my ideas are, my setup, and how we're going to put it all together. So before we kick off this project in a major way, I did call Paul to come help out.
Yeah, dude, you're gonna need a lot of help for this. There's a lot of building going on.
There's a lot of wood. It's quite heavy, I know, because when I was moving my pile, I even managed to twist my back a little bit yesterday. So I don't want to push it. I'm gonna have Paul help me out. We also have quite a bit of compost to move. And before we get too deep, I should mention this video is sponsored by Home Depot because we want you to go over to the Home Depot YouTube channel and watch this whole series. Paul and I worked really hard while we were up there.
Oh yeah, moved a ton of rocks.
Oh yeah, ton of everything. And it was a lot of fun, and the project itself was amazing. We worked with a lot of really cool other people like Chaya Ming from Coastal Homestead, Aaron, the Impatient Gardener, and Urban Gardening with Gray, aka Gray. We're all up there to make this amazing project come together. So I'll talk more about that probably a little bit later when we get closer to this compost bin build. But for now, let's get this old one out of here. So Paul and I just finished moving all the compost.
Oh yeah, it was like almost a yard of compost.
Yeah, I think it was actually more than a yard, which defies my calculations because that last bin was basically like 32-inch by 32-inch cubed, and that's a little under a yard, and we ended up with like a yard and a half.
Well, you didn't account for all the compost that was against the fence, right?
Yeah, the bin had a lot of big gaps in it, so a lot of spill out. I'm accounting for that a little bit in part of the design with some of the complications that I've added to this. Otherwise, it's supposed to be a very simple build, and you'll see some of it right here. So these are the first boards that we're going to be working with. This is going to be making up the back wall of the bin. So this whole bin is going to be 10 feet wide instead of like the standard 9, because most people do 3-foot actual bins. Instead, I wanted to go to 10 because A, that's a type of dimensional lumber you could already get standard, so I don't have to cut it. That's a great start.
That makes sense.
And then also, as I sketched out this design, which took me a lot longer than I cared to admit, because turns out lumber math, while it's very simple, it's all plus minus of regular numbers that have pretty easy digits. You have to account for a lot of different things, like where's the wood gonna fit against the other one? This is a 2x6 board, which in reality means it's actually 1.5 by 5.5, which I'll never understand.
Like that.
I'll never understand that. Hopefully you guys on the other side of the pond using the metric system don't have nominal dimensions, but that's a tale for a different day. So what we're going to do here is we're going to be screwing all these into the back wall itself. So I do need to make a couple cuts. This is a 6-foot board. I got 12-foot 2x6s at Home Depot, and I asked them to cut them in half because I realized I could not fit a 12-foot board in my van. I was able to squeak in the 10-foot boards, barely, but 12, not gonna happen. So this is going to be cut into, we're gonna get 4 36-inch boards. That's going to be the support for the back wall. And we're going to be using this Ryobi 12-inch miter saw. Now, I had this exact saw up in Maine when I built the compost bin there, and I realized how much I needed a miter saw. Yeah. This whole time I've been using a regular circular saw, and it gets the job done. Of course it cuts, but it's so much easier to get straight repeatable cuts, angles, and also having the stand here is just going to make this insanely easy because this has the ability to build in stops, and we're going to be doing a lot of repetitive cuts. So let's go ahead and get this cut into 36 inches and we'll get that back wall built. The beautiful thing about a setup like this where you have an actual miter saw stand, because I've used miter saws before, but I've never had the proper stand, and now I understand the beauty behind it, because what I could do now is I could measure this out, make sure my blade hits at 36 inches where I want the cut. And then this right here is actually an adjustable stop. So all I have to do now is pull every single board onto the stand, pull it up to this, and it's going to measure to 36 inches every time. I don't have to measure. Now I probably still will because it's the first time I've done it. I just wanna make sure in my head that this is working as I intended. Whenever you're using power tools, especially ones that are quite loud like a saw, you wanna have some safety in place. At a bare minimum, hearing protection. I've got these little ear foam plugs. I'm gonna roll them up, install those. And I'm also going to be wearing these safety glasses to avoid any sort of stuff from flying into my eye. We've got the stop set up, 36 inches on the spot. We can get to cutting. Now we've got all the first pieces ready to install the back. So now I'm going to explain what is going on and why all this layout looks so weird. First off, I cut some scrap blocks. These are 1.5 inch, just like everything else, because the gap between each board on the back and all the sides is 1.5 inches. That way you get a little bit of airflow into the compost pile without like losing too much big stuff out of the pile as it's building. The other thing you're gonna see here is this line. Now, I had to think about it. I made a couple wrong lines over there because I realized this is the back, and I'll show you exactly what that means. First off, we wanna make sure that all these boards are indeed in line with each other, and as they are set up right here, they're perfectly in line. And now the reason why this line is here, this is measured at about 4 inches. So that way, if I take this backboard, what's going to happen is I want this board to line up against all those lines. So when I set it down, I'm looking on the back of the board here, and I'm making sure that each one of these lines is right on the edge of that board. Once I do that, that looks good all the way down. I could verify that by taking my little speed square here, and right here is the 1.5 inch mark, and that's exactly where I'm at. And it'll make a little bit more sense once this is stood up, but there's gonna be 4 of these boards on the back to support the whole thing, and then we'll stand it up and start putting in the members that stick outwards. So now we're gonna set up the other side the exact same way, and then 2 more of these boards are gonna go into the middle section, and that's going to define the walls of the bin themselves. This is probably the hardest, most annoying part of the build, which is supporting the very first wall, or the back of the compost bin. So what we have here is that we're gonna match these bottom boards. At this point, I guess I'll tell you why I decided to make this so complicated by using 2x8s at the bottom instead of 2x6s. And that has to do with the fact that the old one was all 2x6s with 2-inch spacing, and you saw how much compost was like spilled out of everywhere. And the basic idea, as far as I'm thinking about it, is as the compost pile gets further down and more mature, it's going to be finer stuff at the bottom that's more broken down. So I'm hoping that this will just give me a little less spill out. Honestly, I don't know if that made sense, but we did it. So here we are. The other reason I will say is that I couldn't get the math to perfectly work out to be like at 3 feet high with the 2x6s without having gaps I didn't like. Yeah. So that's another cop-out excuse there. But honestly, whatever I thought at the moment, I'm sure it made sense, to me at least. So we'll screw this in. All right, so that one's in. I'm gonna go do the other one, and then we might move it into place and screw in the rest over there.
Yeah.
One of the harsh realities of my yard is that there's not a single level surface here. So even though that wood is squared up against that wood, the ground isn't level. But once all this weight is in and it's all set in place, it'll settle in just fine.
100%.
So now that the side walls are on, the back wall is done, this front board is left uncut. And the reason for that is that it keeps the entire system rigid, because these boards here are gonna slot in. They're gonna be removable, but we want the bottom board to actually keep this whole structure in place. Otherwise, it's just gonna blow out.
Yeah.
So the only downside of this design of having the 2x8 on the bottom is that now I do have to have a little bit harder time actually getting the last bits of compost out. And will I regret the decision? If I do, all I have to do is replace this and a lot of stuff. So we'll see.
Easy,
We'll
right?
see. We'll see. But for now, this is what we're doing, and I'm not unhappy with it. I think I always overthink everything that I build, and this is no exception.
Yeah.
So this build is really starting to come together, and it feels like it's actually going to work.
Oh yeah.
Now, I do want to mention that if you want to see me and Paul build a compost bin that's much more straightforward, this was inspired off of that design, but that one was a nice 2-base system without any of these different woods and choices that I've made here that I'm now regretting. So that one is on the Home Depot channel when we did the From Scratch series. We did 8 episodes together, partnered with Home Depot. We flew up to Maine, me, Paul, Chai Ming, Aaron, and Gray, and also Kevin, of course, and we built out an entirely new space. New garden beds, an outdoor kitchen, including a greenhouse refresh, and all sorts of everything in between that is required to sustain a place like that, including a compost bin. So that is actually episode 3, if I'm not mistaken. And right now, almost all of the episodes are out. So head over to the Home Depot YouTube channel, check it out. Thanks to Home Depot for sponsoring this video as well and helping me get a compost bin at my place, and Ryobi and their fantastic tools. I gotta say that miter saw with the actual stand and the stop guards to make repeatable cuts was a game changer. And the actual impact driver and the drill so far are working fantastically. And of course we use the exact same things in Maine, and they held up through all the different crazy stuff that we did to them. So thanks to Home Depot. Please check out this series. It was really fun. It was something new that we haven't done before, partnering with a bigger group like Home Depot. And the whole thing came together really amazingly, I have to say. And the people that we worked with were incredible. I think you guys will really enjoy it. So thank you. And now let's get the rest of this thing done. And we're almost there.
Let's do it.
Put these in here. The compost bin is officially built.
Mostly done, right?
Yeah. I mean, like the actual structure and everything that needs to be done is done. The only thing I'm missing is I have to cut a couple more of these boards. My math wasn't right, and then I just have to cut a couple more, but here's how it works. You basically slide it in, just like that.
Like butter.
And as you're building your pile up, it just keeps getting taller and taller. And then when you need to move it, you just remove the boards and you're able to scoop it out. But the thing I like about this is it's like really stiff.
It's a house.
And there's a lot of weight that goes into a compost bin, as we know, since we moved the last pile. And this looks really clean. Thank you for your help today, because this, honestly, I definitely wouldn't have finished or got to this stage.
Yeah, I don't think so, man.
Not at all, especially with how heavy this is, the superstructure itself. So tomorrow morning, I'll come back through and I'll add in the last bits of the compost we moved. And I'll show you guys how to start your new pile so it's off to a great start. But that's it for today. The sun is on its way to setting, but it was a very productive day.
It was.
So thanks for your help.
Of course, man.
So now let's talk about how to build a compost pile from scratch the first time. And at this point, hopefully you will have accumulated some greens. In this case, we've been holding off on the compost since I've been moving it and getting ready for a new one. I have an entire bowl here of leftovers and trimmings from the kitchen. That's one of them. I also have my compost bin, which has plenty of stuff in it. And this is a bucket of compost we generated throughout the week as we were waiting to add to this. So all of this is basically greens. Now on this side, I did mix in a little bit of browns just to stop it from getting too funky, because this is about a week old at this point. And then I also have some green branches. Those were trimmed from over here that were just in the way of the compost bin project. So greens are anything that is alive or anything that is fresh, essentially. So if you're looking at like a green onion that's rotting in your fridge, that is a green because it's still not dry. Leftovers like old brown rice, that might be on the edge of green and brown, but anything alive from the garden, any sort of trimmings, tomato leaves, branches, all of that is green waste, and that will contribute to the heat of your pile. Now, the greens have nitrogen in them, and they also have a lot of moisture, and the bacteria that eats it, the microbes, will generate a lot of heat in the process. But In order to break down that material, they actually need carbon. This does not have enough carbon. It has a higher nitrogen to carbon ratio. That's basically the thing that dictates whether something is a brown or green and how hot it gets. Whereas anything that's a brown, like these chipped up wood branches here, those will be higher in carbon than any of the green stuff that we're adding to this pile. So we basically don't worry about it. None of it actually really matters. The only thing that really matters is that you're balancing some amount of browns with your greens. And the best way to know that is basically, is your compost pile stinky? If it's stinky, it's probably too wet and doesn't have enough browns. Just add some more and mix it and you'll probably be fine. Now, I do also want to talk about sources of browns because I know that this could be tricky for people like me who live in an urban area that's kind of a desert. There's not that much sort of free biomass around. So what I have here is chipped up mulberry branches. These are from my tree that I ran through a tripper. And the reason why this is so good is that these are all these tender young branches. You can see one of the branches right here. It's a very small diameter branch. This is what's called ramial wood. Now, younger branches have a much higher they have a much higher nitrogen ratio than regular wood. So this is closer to a green. It's not a green, but it'll break down pretty quickly in the pile. So this will serve as a good brown. Another fantastic source of brown is just fallen leaves or any sort of dried plant matter. So I collected this from the bushes over in my driveway. It's just a bunch of leaf litter, little branches that are broken through time, entirely bone dry, fantastic source of browns. And then over here, I have some straw, another really fast sort of decomposing brown. But essentially in the end, you want as much diversity as possible, and you also want some level of chunkiness. The bigger chunks like this wood here will allow air to penetrate your pile better and will just lead to a better process throughout the time. So I'll give you a little tip on that in a second, but I also want to share another free brown resource, and this is coffee. This is from my local coffee roaster. What this is coffee chaff. So this is the material that comes off the coffee beans when they roast it, and it's a really fluffy, light colored. It has a coffee smell to it, but this is entirely a brown. It is very fine and it tends to clump, but this is a great source of browns that you could oftentimes just get for free from your local coffee roaster. At mine, they just leave it in bags out on the driveway and I just go by and grab it whenever I want. So now we've covered some browns, we've covered some greens. Let's go ahead and get some of this into this pile. And the other ingredient I wanted to mention that's a great way to especially kickstart a pile is dirt. Now in this case, my compost bin is directly on soil, so I don't have to worry about adding any. But if you don't have any soil or dirt near your pile, I would recommend grabbing some from your garden and sprinkling it on top of your pile, because that will introduce some microbes that will help kickstart the whole process. Now, of course, I've had compost here for quite some time, so I'm sure I have plenty of microbes already available. The first thing I'm going to add is my old bucket of compost waste and some browns that I already mixed in. It's already broken down a decent amount. Then we'll go ahead and add this compost pail, some leeks, some kale stems, and then we got this here, some more greens from the kitchen. I got some banana peels, some old grapes from the back of the fridge, a rotten onion, and some orange peels, which I am totally fine with throwing in the compost. Some people are weird about it. I don't know why. In my case, I feel like they break down just fine. Now, as for these branches here, they're nice, fresh, and green, but you don't want to put it in whole. With compost, it's all about surface area. So at the very least, I'm not gonna go crazy on this because it's gonna take too long, but I wanna at least break this down into some smaller chunks. That way it'll help it break down a little bit faster. So now at this point, we have our greens in there, and what I wanna do here is I'll just go ahead and kick it since I have my foot here, but a fork would be an ideal situation. And we're gonna spread it out to get more surface area. We want the browns to cover as much as possible here. So now we have our base layer of sort of decomposing waste. Now we could go ahead and add some browns. So here's some of that leaf litter I collected. And actually another thing that I forgot to mention is that at the bottom of your pile, one of the best things you could do is just add some old sticks. You wanna make sure this is all dried up so it's not gonna actively regrow in your bin. But what this is going to do is it's gonna provide some chunkiness, and it's going to force more air into our pile, because now it's not going to be able to settle as much. It's going to have to deal with these sticks in the way. That's another reason why I wanted to mention chunkiness and why it's so important. When you have big chunks of material in your pile, there's just more air, there's more harbor for some of the stuff that likes to break down your pile, and it's always going to be beneficial. So what I like to do is when I sift my compost to use it in my garden beds, I save all the big chunks and I add that back to my hot pile. This does two different things. First, This is all full of life already. It's already been inoculated because it's been in an active pile, so it's full of the microbes that will help kickstart this process. The other thing is that they're all chunks. So this will again provide more aeration and breathing for our pile. So I'm gonna just go ahead and add this whole bucket because at the starting point, I'd rather have more browns than green to soak up any of the extra liquid that might settle out of the pile as it begins to decompose as we build it out. It's been 1 week since we put this compost bin in place, and over that time period, I've been busy. I've added 2 new features to this compost bin, which I think maybe everyone should have, and I'll show you those in a second. But first, I wanted to just talk about how good this looks. It looks so much better than what was here before, which was just a dilapidated multi-bin system literally thrown together that was falling apart and spilling its contents everywhere. Now with the full wall of wood here, it really just doesn't look like anything bad at all. It just looks like a little structure in the back of your garden area, nothing gross about it. And actually one of the future things that I might add would make it look even better, but we'll talk about that in a second. Now in this 1 week, I have been busy and I already have about a 1 foot high compost pile, and it's already hot. It's in like the 100 to 120 degree range. You can see some moldy pita breads on top that we just added in, but there's a whole bunch of chopped up garden debris. Now this is stuff like bolted chard. I have some bolted broccoli here that I'm gonna show you how to process in a second. But the other thing I wanted to mention is that I've also now placed some of my browns right next to my pile to make life super easy. And there's also a couple other tools here that I think is going to change how quickly and easy it is for me to make compost. Now, one of the browns that I'm working with here is a bag full of coffee chaff. This is stuff that you could get for free at your local coffee roaster. It's a byproduct of roasting your coffee. So what I'm going to do here is just go ahead and sprinkle some of these browns right onto the pile, just to keep the moisture down, keep the stink down, and get this thing activated even further. So now what about when we're adding stuff to the garden? The most important thing to compost is surface area. The finer something is cut up before you put it in, the faster it'll break down and turn into rich, beautiful compost. And that is where the first new addition to this compost bin comes into play, which is the compost chopping block. I think at this point, you guys see the machete and you get the idea of what this is. And I will point out that I actually built one at first using one of the leftover boards. This was one of the 2x8s, and I decided I needed something a little bigger, so I ran back to Home Depot and got a short 2x12 here, and this is the perfect size chopping board. So now the deal is whenever I haul something large out of the garden, even a pile of nasturtiums or like a bolted broccoli like this, I could just take my handy machete here. What I could do is really break down this material quite substantially. And now when I move it into the compost pile, I just have to push it and all of it will break down even faster. This should speed up the process and also just make your pile look better. It's also actually very satisfying and fun to use a gigantic machete to chop up your plants. There we go. Tons of surface area, a little bit of dirt from the roots, no big deal. And who cares if this board gets chopped up because it is essentially a sacrificial board here. Now, to build this, what I did is I got the board to the length of my bin and I put a couple stop blocks on the ends here. That's to stop it from sliding around. It makes it really easy to move back and forth like this. And honestly, I don't know why I never had one of these in the first place. It is probably the best addition to this compost bin thus far. Now, I did want to talk really quickly about how this compost system is going to work. In here, I have the pile that existed in the previous one, and it's still breaking down. Right now, it's sitting at just under 100 degrees. Once that drops down into like the ambient temperature under 80 degrees, all of this is going to be scooped into the final box where it'll sit to mature, and I could basically start using it from that point on. Once it's cold under 80, if I turn it and it doesn't heat up again, that's effectively finished composting. It's not mature. Some people like to mature their compost by allowing it to sit for even longer, but at that point, it's essentially ready to be used in the garden. Now, I won't be moving this bin over until it is absolutely full. At that point, I'll scoop it, move it over. That'll give it another kick, and it should break down quite fast. Now, the other feature that I added is one that's all around the outside of the bin, and you might even be able to see some right over here. So the second new feature that I added to this compost bin is right here. It is a stainless steel gopher protective mesh that I've wrapped all the way along the outside of my compost bin. Now this is doing a couple different things for me actually. First and foremost, the idea behind it was to not make this rodent proof, because a compost bin that's rodent proof is probably just a fool's errand. It's really not worth the effort to try to go through it. Eventually they'll find their way in. Instead, I wanted to deter them from looking at my pile in the first place. So this gopher mesh, it's way too small for anything to crawl through, but it also still allows airflow because these slats are here to provide air into the compost pile. They're about 1.5 inches. Now, obviously, it's not doing that much. It's not like it's injecting oxygen into the center of my pile, but it's still allowing the outside to breathe, and that is something valuable to have. The reason why I put this mesh on the outside here is for a very simple reason. I always see these compost bin designs that put all this mesh on the inside, or even sometimes remove the wood, replace it with mesh to get the most airflow, but that just looked like a nightmare. I thought about the fact that I would shove my fork in there and constantly get caught on the wire. I'd rip it up. It looked like trash in no time. So I didn't want to do that. So I put it on the outside. Now this is doing the second thing for me, which is to stop particles from spilling out of my bin as easily. This mesh is fine enough that pretty much most things are not going to just randomly fall out the edges like they did in my old pile, which quickly became a mess and also helped rot the exterior faster. Just wasn't a good system. So this mesh now will block rodents, slow them down at least. They can obviously come in from above, but it also still allows airflow while blocking stuff from constantly spilling out. So even on the second bin here, where I already have a compost pile that's basically broken down, I added it and I haven't seen much spill out. Of course, some things will get through, but it will keep this whole system way tidier. So now I wanted to cover some future ideas of things that I might add to this compost system. So with the build entirely complete, what are the other features I was considering adding to this bin that just didn't make the list? The first one would be some sort of lid or roof system for this compost bay. And there are a couple reasons to do that. If you live somewhere really wet and rainy, you definitely want some sort of way of covering this or putting a roof on it, because too much water in your compost pile will lead to it becoming anaerobic, which means there's no oxygen, it'll be too wet, it'll smell terrible, it'll be really heavy, you're not gonna have a good time composting if it is soaking wet. So definitely consider it a roof or lid system if you live somewhere quite rainy. But here in San Diego, we do have another problem, which is that we have a lot of sun. And sunlight is UV rays, which is sanitizing and can kill life and microbes. So even right now on this bay where I have just maturing compost that's still breaking down, what I did is I threw a burlap bag on top of it to protect it from direct UV, and that should stop this from getting like cooked on the surface and killing anything or drying it out too much. Now beyond that, there was something else I considered, which was a aeration system or some amount of extra airflow into the center of the pile. People usually do this using perforated drainage pipe that you could either build out at the bottom of your bins or directly put them right in the middle to get oxygen straight to the center. And that will provide more airflow, which will heat up the pile faster, and everything should break down substantially faster. But decided it was just a little bit too complex. I like this low-tech idea as much as I love pushing things to the limit. I might add that to the future if it becomes a problem where I just simply am running out of space and I cannot make my compost fast enough. I just don't think that's going to be a true reality for me. So it is something I've considered, and I might easily be able to add that in the future, but having the chopping block system, the mesh all the way around it, those were fantastic things that I'm so happy I did. Now, the other thing I'd love to hear from you guys is what part of this system do you like that you wish you had on your compost bin? What do you think I should add instead? What did I forget to consider? Anything else about composting? I'd love to hear you guys' thoughts. And I'd also love for you guys to go over to the Home Depot YouTube channel and watch the From Scratch series. We here at Epic Gardening partnered with them to make this entirely from scratch series where we started with basically nothing, built out an entire garden, outdoor kitchen area, pergolas, refreshed a greenhouse. It was really fun working with a fantastic group of people, including Paul, Urban Gardening with Gray himself, Chai Ming from Coastal Homestead, and Aaron from the Impatient Garden. We had such a blast doing this whole project. It was really fun. Most of the episodes should be live now on the Home Depot YouTube channel. Please go check it out and let us know what you think about this compost bin, and I'll see you guys next time.